Welcome to Rediscovering Earth's Lost Topography. Today, we're doing our podcast out of Wentzville, Missouri, where I am here with Tony Aguilar. Tony is an entrepreneur who owns a local locksmith business. Tony is a veteran who has served 7 years in the Navy, and I want to welcome Tony to our show. Tony, welcome.
Thank you, Ron. It's an honor to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, Tony, you do quite a bit of stuff outdoors, correct?
Yes.
Can you name some of the stuff that you really enjoy?
Well, the main thing I like to do is fishing. That's my favorite outdoor activity. I'll do saltwater, freshwater, doesn't matter. I also like camping and hiking and just being outdoors. I think it's good for the soul, if you will.
Yes, it is. And I think we were talking earlier before the podcast about electronics and stuff like that kids are doing nowadays without all these electronic devices. Well, obviously not all the electronic devices being canceled out because nobody would be hearing us today. But as far as some of these gaming systems and stuff like that kids are doing, it'd be way better for them to be outdoors fishing, hiking, camping, float trips. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I agree 100% that when we were kids, we were outdoors all the time. And I was in Boy Scouts and all that stuff when I was a kid, and I loved it. We would go camping for weeks at a time and doing floats and float trips and just being out there, campfires and staying the night, and roughing it, if you will. And it made us better people for it. I mean, we learned about nature and, making knots and archery and all the things that stuff entails. And it was a good time in my life. I made me want to spend, as an adult, we were outdoors all the time.
Yep. I mean, I know I've been around for a long time, and back when I wanted to do something entertaining, I'd go out and sit on a log out in the woods and listen to the wildlife, sit on the side of a river, watch beavers and pretty much all kinds of critters out there. And if you sat out there quietly, I mean, it was a perfect meditation. I really enjoyed that. I mean, it was the best way to relax, basically. Nowadays, I still do meditation. I do meditation through some podcasts that I listen to. You ever do any of that kind of stuff? Or?
Yeah, over the years, I've done some meditating. I think it's a great way to find the answer to your own problems, and a good place to do that at is in nature and outdoors. It's getting harder and harder to find places unless you go really far out there. I mean, I've noticed, I remember when as a kid, we would see all kinds of different birds and things like that when I was a kid, that in the same area. Now you don't see any of that stuff anymore. You have to go further and further out just to catch it. It's been a while, but I would say I'd recommend anybody to go out there because it is, there's studies out there that show that being out there really kind of allows you to decompress. And I really believe that. And, that's what I like about fishing in the morning, getting up at 4:35 in the morning before the world wakes up, go out there and find the lake or wherever I'm going and just watch the world wake up. I feel better all in all throughout the day when I get to do those kind of things.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and what you just mentioned, I actually talked about on a previous podcast, because you are correct. We're pushing wildlife further and further and further out. And then some of the wildlife is actually coming into some of the neighborhoods and subdivisions because basically we're building in their territories. And that's something that needs to be talked about. But I did bring up in a previous podcast, the Have You Ever Wondered podcast. Like, have you ever wondered what's underneath this subdivision? What's underneath this neighborhood? What was here before all these homes were built? We're right now in Wentzville, Missouri, and this used to be all farmland. Now it's all built up. So yes, not only wildlife has to be seen further and further out, but we also have to travel further and further out to be able to find some wild areas where there is basically places that you can see the stars at night without the city lights. And that's one thing I like. That's one thing that I've talked to several people about, is seeing the city lights is not noticeable to most of the teens when they're out, because they don't know what total no light means when you're out in the woods.
I think they call that light pollution, don't they?
I think so.
That's one of my favorite things to do as well, and I'm glad you brought that up. And sometimes I forget that, but when going out there in complete darkness and in a clear night and seeing the stars and all that, and when I was in the Navy, we would go float around, and I would lay on the flight deck, rocking back and forth, and it was so clear sometimes. I mean, you could just see so many stars out there, more than you ever possibly could imagine you'd ever see in a city. And it is fascinating because it really kind of gets you to wonder about all the things that are out there. And I mean, it was so clear we could see satellites, you know. That's how clear. I mean, you see going across the sky. And of course, then I was like, oh my God, you know, what is that? And of course, you know, it turned out to be satellites, but I'd never seen that. You will never see that in a city.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you take those things away, it you know, from people and kids and everything else, it takes away the wonder. Like if, you know, back in the day when they were kids, that's all you had to do. All you could do is go, you know, look at the stars or whatever, and it made them curious and created, you know, the desire to learn more about nature and everything else. And with the way things are now, it's just being taken away little by little. Yeah, I like to do that a lot, actually. It's relaxing to me. Just go out there.
There is a lot of places out there, and I think that's cool that you actually laid on the deck.
Flight deck, yeah.
Yep. And that kind of reminds me back when I was younger, and I would actually go out in the woods with some of the grottos that I was part of, and we would go so far back out into the woods, and when you lay on the ground and look up and you can see straight sky in the total darkness down there with no city lights around you or anything, you're 100% correct. You can see what you would think is shooting stars. But one of my buddies, he was watching through the telescope, and he's like, no, that's a satellite. An area that's completely just black outside, and all you can see is the sky, stars, and the moon, and all that kind of stuff. You'll be able to see so far out into space that it's gorgeous. I mean, it's a totally different atmosphere, the twinkling of the stars and the twinkling of everything up there. But some of those things that we thought was shooting stars were like they had a red tint to them or something like that. Those are actually satellites flying by. So
the space station, you can see that from time to time, and that's grown over the years, so it's getting brighter and brighter. But yeah, you can see all that stuff out there. You know, I heard there's a place in Missouri that you can see the Milky Way certain times of the year very well. All the years I spent out at sea, I never saw the Milky Way, and I don't know why. You asked me earlier, well, what have I wondered about? That's one of the things. It's like, why did I see the Milky Way? Out in the middle of the ocean, there's nothing. It's pitch black. You can't see the hand, you know, your hand in front of your face sometimes. But you could see the sky. But I never saw that. But there is a place in Missouri, apparently, and I forget the name of it, and I wish I could pull it out. But it's in Missouri. It's in southern Missouri that you can see the Milky Way clear as day in certain times of the year. Now, it has to obviously be a clear night, but I think it's interesting, and I would like to check that out. I'm going to follow up with that.
would that be near Eminence, somewhere in that area?
It could be. I forget who told me about that.
Either Eminence or Joplin.
No, I think it was further south. Joplin's out west, I think, a little bit, but I thought it was further south. And, you know, I remember who told me about it. I'm going to find out and let you know as soon as I find out.
Okay.
I just remember who it was.
Yep, that sounds good. So some of the travels that you've done, can you tell us a little bit about that? Like, where all have you traveled, and some of the stuff that you've done while you were in other areas, like not just in the United States, but abroad? I mean, we are talking about the entire earth. We're not just talking about Missouri. We're not just talking about the U.S. We're talking about everywhere.
Well, I've been fortunate enough to be able to travel a lot of places. All the places I went out of the country pretty much were through the military. Some of the places that we went while I was in the military was the Caribbean, of course. This is back in the 90s, and we visited pretty much all the islands down there: St. Croix, St. Kitts, Aruba, Barbados, Puerto Rico, and several others. We went to Cuba on the military base there in Cuba. Now, we didn't get to go off base, but that was some of the most beautiful water there was in Cuba, believe it or not. When we would go to these places, we would port usually for a day or two sometimes, and sometimes we would just get gas and leave or whatever. But we were able to leave. We would go out and about in the towns, and we did a lot of fishing. One of my favorite experiences down there was we went scuba diving, and it was the only time I've been scuba diving, but I really enjoyed it. I highly recommend it to anybody that can tolerate it. It's once you get down there, you can see so clearly. You can see the shelf, the earth going down, and you can see just for it's humbling, is what it is. At least it did that to me. As I kind of realized how small you really are out there, and you see the fish swimming around, and we saw some sharks and all kinds of wildlife out there, and it was really an amazing experience. And I want to do that again. Now that I'm older, I think I would even appreciate it even more. But it was a good experience down there. Also, some of the other places on the island, there was just a good time. There were good people down there, and we had a good time. Some other places I've been that would probably be kind of unique and was when we went through the Panama Canal. That was kind of neat. Well, it wasn't kind of neat. It was really neat, actually. Watching the things go up, elevate the water, and then the ship would just go up, and then it would go back down. And when you're going down, it's very narrow, actually, and it's nothing but jungle through a lot of it, on both sides, thick jungle. And I will never forget that experience as well. That was fun. We went to once we got on the other side, we went to Colombia, and that was a nice city, or country, and the culture down there was amazing, and it was a number of years ago, but I do remember I had a great time down there. Another place worth mentioning was that we went to was Israel. We went to Israel once in the when we were on that side of the world. Went to Jerusalem, got to tour that, which was fascinating. We've been to Cyprus and the Mediterranean, and Trieste in Italy, and a number of other places. Some of the stuff over there the food was amazing. We were eating good when we reported. We'd run. Somebody would run off the boat and go get some food for everybody, and oh my goodness, I remember eating so well. Some really good food. I've been to Palma, Spain, and some other places like that. When we would port, we'd do fishing and things of that nature, and it was always a good time getting out in the sun and stuff like that. I've been to Mexico many times. I went to Santa Rosalia for fishing and all that stuff. Mexico City, Guanajuato, Cancun. We went to Chichen Itza, if I'm saying that right. The pyramids down there. I got lots of pictures of that. That culture was big into astronomy, and it was amazing that back then they had able to track the stars like they did, and so accurately. And just to be in the presence of these massive structures was amazing, and I'll never forget it. And I'd like to go back. Actually, I want to go check out, go to Peru and see Machu Picchu. I would love to go travel there. That would be amazing. But I don't know if that's going to happen this year or not. But I would really like to go there and check it out.
Can you tell me a little bit about that area?
Well, Machu Picchu?
Yep.
Well, only from what I've seen in different documentaries about it. The structures are much older than they say much older than the pyramids. And if I remember correctly, they have these structures that have holes drilled in them that are perfectly drilled through, like granite and stuff. So according to the experts of the show I was watching, they're saying they would have a hard time doing that today. Getting that exact drill out with no flaws or anything like that. And they were doing this way back when, so it really makes me wonder, what was going on there, and just to be in the presence of something like that and just kind of experiencing it in person would be, and getting there, be an adventure. And I would love to do that because you got to hike up there. There's no planes that are dropping you off up there, I don't think, and I'd imagine it'd be a challenge, but I think it would be worth it at the end of the day. But before I get all the way down to Peru, I do want to go to the Grand Canyon and check out and go to Yellowstone, spend a week over there. That would be really neat. And as many places as I've been in the country traveling, there are two places that a lot of people go that I haven't made it to yet. So that is on my list.
That's awesome. I mean, and I can say Yellowstone is absolutely gorgeous. There's a lot to see down there. It's a beautiful area. But I've been, I don't know, pretty much to almost not every state in the United States. It'd be quicker for me to state the states that I have not been in, which would be California. I've never been in New York. I've never been, let's see, Maine, which is at the end of the Appalachian Trail, which that was one of the trails that I was going to do back in 2000. I've done sections of the Appalachian Trail. Being here in Missouri, we have the Ozark Trail. On the previous podcast, I also asked on the Have You Ever Wondered podcast, about long distance trails. And let me ask you, Tony, do you know what the longest trail is in the United States?
No, not off the top of my head. I don't recall. I know I would have a hard time traveling it myself, as much as I would like to try it. I don't know if I'd make it that far. There's people that do that, though. I mean, they say, I'm done, and they just cruise around there and live off the deal there. And I've always had respect for that. I don't know if I could do it. But what is the
American Discovery Trail? It's actually 6,800 miles long.
Now, is that the same one Lewis and Clark was on and all that, or is that
no? No, that's a totally different trail. Don't know if they would have discovered the entire United States. So that one goes from California all the way across the St. Louis, Missouri area. Actually, it goes all the way across Missouri, and then it goes to the eastern border. I will be able to give you more details about that in the future, because that's some of the stuff that we talked about in the previous podcast that we will be talking about is some of the longest trails and stuff like that. So, but what's one of the longest hikes or trails that you've ever been on yourself?
When I was younger, of course, and in scouting and all that, we would go on trails, and I mean, we would walk all day long. And then they had these obstacle courses along the way where you climb up a tree and do the lines across and, rappel down and all that. And I don't recall the names of them. I just don't remember that stuff. But I do remember being out there. And I remember it was a beautiful day. And it's probably one of the longest I've ever walked out there. And then all of a storm came in. I don't know, how it is out here. And it was almost a tornado is what it felt like. Now, I was a kid, so everything felt, but it was very intense, and we got through it, of course, but we were all drenched at the end of the day, and that was the longest hike I've ever been on, and that was all day. I mean, we probably went 8-9 hours of nonstop walking.
Wow. And that had a rope course in it as well, you said?
Yep, I do. I do remember that. It had the ladder, and you go up there and then go across a bunch of different obstacles and then go back down to the other end of it, and that was part of the deal. And that's when I realized that I experienced something during that trip that turkeys can fly, not for long distances, but this turkey came flying out of nowhere, scared the bejesus out of everybody. Because all you hear just, and here comes this big old bird or whatever. We were young, so we're all freaking out, and it came from above the tree line, and so that's why we didn't think it was a turkey. But the people there were like, yeah, that was a turkey, and so turkeys can fly.
Yes, they can,
But they can.
I agree with you 100% there, too, because I've actually been out in some pretty dense forest and basically was coming to a prairie area, tall grass, all that, and it must have been a whole group of turkeys, but I think I spooked them just as much as they spooked me, and when they took off, I have to say it was very
loud,
very, very scary. I mean, it made me jump because they weren't very far. Their distance was not far at all from wherever I was at. So, but yeah, it was loud. They are not a quiet flyer. So yeah, it's cool how turkeys can fly and stuff like that.
Well, most of my life I didn't think they could. I mean, I know they got wings and all that stuff, but nobody's ever showed me a turkey flying.
Yeah.
I thought they lost the ability. They were just kind of like a lamb bird, But Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of like, herrings and egrets, stuff like that. Most people that see those, they see them on the banks of lakes or on like rivers and stuff like that. And a lot of people don't realize, I mean, people know that they can fly because they see them flying across lakes. Most people don't realize that like egrets or herrings, and I think it's the herrings. We have a place that's not too far from us that actually where they all roost in the top of trees at a certain time of the year. And that was really cool to see because it was just a whole bunch of these birds that were all
Talking about
up
the
in,
little ones that like all fly together?
No,
Okay.
these are the ones that have the really long legs. They're
Okay.
great blue herons. And,
Yep. I'm sorry.
The egrets. This was on the Merrimack River that we actually got to see that. Yep. Have you done float trips on there?
Oh, yeah. We have float trips, number of those. We did a lot of those here and in Florida. I lived in Jacksonville for about 13 years, and they have, it's the whole state's dang near underwater, below sea level, but they have a lot of rivers, and we did a lot of floating. There was the only concern we had down there was alligators, snakes, and stuff like that, but we didn't really have that too much. They have a lot of springs down there, a lot of springs in Florida.
Well, with the springs and stuff down there, and I keep jumping back to this other podcast that we did with Have You Ever Wondered, but we talk about have you ever wondered why springs are the same temperature all year long, no matter what the ambient temperature is. Springs are always the same temperature.
Is that across the country, though? Like, or world, even? Is it like they're all kind of between that range? Or I would imagine some would be hotter and some would be cooler, wouldn't they?
Well, I mean, I think the average is between 55 to 58 degrees. That's at least, I think, in the United States. I cannot tell you in other portions of the world what the temperatures are, but I could research it and find out. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, in Florida, is the springs down there, are they just as cold as they are here in Missouri?
Oh, it was about, let's see, outside. It was hot. We were ready to go. We had to walk to this place, and it opened up to this big hole, and it was about a 5 foot drop into the water, and the water was like ice cold. We were sweating and all that, and then we jumped in. And I think since then, and this was years ago as well, but since then they stopped allowing people to do that. But it was like very, very cold. And I would believe it would be 50-something degrees is what I would guess it was at if I had to guess.
Yep.
And we got out. We were shivering. It was so cold. And then, of course, the sun warmed us right back up. But
yeah,
it was very, very neat.
And it's kind of cool because you think about it. I mean, when you think about 55, even 58, 59 degrees, somewhere in that ballpark, air temperature, it's really not that bad when you're outside. But when you go from 90 degrees to 55 degrees.
Your body's sweating and you go jump into that. It was, I can only imagine it was a fraction of what those guys that are up in the Arctic, they jump in the ice. They'll make a pool and then jump. I don't know what they're thinking, but I guess there's something to it. But yeah, that was a shocker. But it was fascinating.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So do you go to Florida very often?
Not so much anymore, but I was going on a regular basis. Speaking of Florida, I got to experience a float trip or a fishing expedition with a gentleman in Central Florida. And I had to meet this guy at like 4 a.m, pitch black out. We get on his little boat, and we're going bass fishing. This is what he was trying to get us to find the bass, right? And we floated for about 30 minutes or so, just in and out of these little canals and waterways. And so he puts us in the spot, and let me tell you, I have never caught that many bass at one time, and they were all huge. They were all, over 6-7 pounds each, and they were just monsters. And I have a picture of it somewhere, but I had a great time. I need to find that guy's number, see if I can make my way back down there, because it was a great time, and it was affordable. And they have a lot of guys that do that down there. I mean, all you have to do is look on the internet nowadays, and somebody will take you to these spots. And but it was a great time. I really enjoy that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, that's pretty cool. And any other topics or areas that you can think of that you really enjoyed?
Well, like I said, the fishing, saltwater fishing is always a good time. Have you ever been saltwater fishing?
I have not. I've never been saltwater fishing.
So we need to try to get you good with saltwater fishing.
Yep.
I've always had a good experience with that. Now we've been in big groups and small groups, and my buddy caught I want to say it was like a 30-pound tuna, and then put up a fight like you've never seen. And we don't waste any of that stuff if we catch it. We just don't catch it and kill it, throw it back in or anything like that. We do the right thing and make sure it's consumed properly and all that. One of the experiences I have down there, not just a year or so ago, was I was in Florida. Went on for a personal reason. We were out there, and after that, the guy said, "Hey, you got about another hour or so to fish." And I said, "Well, sure, let's do that." And we caught some redfish and some grouper, and we got back to shore. He took care of it. He cleaned it, and then told me to go hit this spot where they'd cook it up for me and everything. It was probably one of the best meals I've ever had. There's just nothing like catching the fish and having it that day. It's not like you get at Red Lobster or
No.
or anything like that. I mean, that's just not the same. It will never compare to it. And that's one thing I do miss about Florida is the ocean and being able to you can sit on the shoreline and just do it. I mean, there's places down there we would just grab a chair, throw our lines out, and I've caught all kinds of stuff out there. There's a lot of in Jacksonville. There's a lot of black tip sharks and stuff like that, but you kind of stay away from people over that way. But yeah, I've caught just so many different kinds of fish, and I always have fun out there.
Well, I've actually been to Florida, and I've never fished in the ocean. I played in the ocean. It was fun to play in the ocean. I actually done some snorkeling and stuff like that, and being able to see sharks up close. Horseshoe crabs, starfish. I mean, it was beautiful. Some of the stuff that I seen was outstanding. I mean, one of the sharks that we seen when we were coming back, the tide was going out, but there was a pool that was still up on the sandy area. And in that pool, which was a pretty small pool, we seen a fish that was probably about 10 to 12 inches long. And I walked over to it, and I'm like, oh, wow, that kind of looks like a shark. And a baby shark. I talked to another person down there, and they're like, yeah, that is a shark. And I'm like, well, it's not going to survive here. This is pretty far from the water. So I reached down and grabbed it by the tail and picked it up and actually took it back out into the ocean and just set it back into the ocean. And it just swam away. I don't know if snapping turtles are down in the salt water or not, but I've been around plenty of snapping turtles in many areas I've been. The common snappers, which look a lot like alligator snappers. Alligator snappers are endangered. Common snapping turtles, those things, I don't know if you know this or not, but they can actually, with their neck, they can extend their neck. If you grab those things by the tail and take them to a different water area, not around public, so that way you can release them back into their own habitat without having somebody go up and get hurt because they will come into public areas, as we were talking about earlier, where all these areas are being built and these animals don't have any place to go. Now you're seeing these huge common snapping turtles that basically they're all along.
They ride up the sewer canals and the little canals all over the place down there. We had an experience with those down there, and alligators in our yard down in Florida, of course, not here. But the dog was running around like crazy, and when we put him aside, and there was a turtle out there, a snapping turtle. This thing was huge, and I brought the dog inside, told that thing, just get out of here, man. The alligator, we had to call wildlife because they get all these little canals and stuff, and when the water's up, these alligators and turtles and everything, they just come walking out of it and they end up in people's yards. And I remember down there, you just can't go to any body of water down there and think that you're okay, no matter big or small. And we went to this one spot, and we weren't fishing or anything. We were just hanging out, and the girls were like, "Hey, let's go swimming" and all that. And I looked down on the way the slide was kind of going into the water, and I'm like, "I'm not getting into that water. There's no way." Of course, they didn't realize what. Now, bear in mind, these people lived in Florida their whole lives, and I'm from Missouri, but I realized that is an alligator slide that you're looking at right there. That you could see right where they go. There was no footprints, but you could see that's where they go. And you can't really see the bottom. You can't see in some of these lakes and stuff. You can go from the ocean to a lake in a matter of minutes in a lot of places. But the snapping turtles and the alligators, snakes, and all that, I mean, they're just everywhere down there. You just got to be careful. I mean, you hear stories about it all the time, but it was I do miss some of that down there for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, and that's, I guess, where you were when you were younger.
Yeah. Well, I lived in Florida for like 13 years.
Okay.
I lived in Tampa, or Jacksonville mainly, and then I lived in Tampa, and then I lived in Clearwater for a while, and back to Tampa, then I came back home. But
okay. Now that's where you actually started your locksmithing career, isn't it? Is in Florida? Yeah.
When I was getting out of the Navy, for whatever reason, I started locking my keys in the car, and my buddy was a locksmith, and I'd call him, "Hey man, come save me," and he did. The first couple of times, he'd hook me up or whatever. He came across town, and then finally, he said he was going to start charging me, or he was going to show me how to do it, because he had been trying to get me to get in that line of work. In the Navy, I fixed helicopters, so I had a mechanic background and all that stuff, and kind of knew how to fix stuff, so and tinker with things like that. So it came naturally, picked it up quickly, and so that's when I started working for a company down there. And we just did car door unlockings and roadside, but after a short time, we got into actual key generations and things like that. Now, this is back before they had all these fancy chip keys and proximity remotes and all that. I mean, we can do all that now, but that's how where I got into it is down there, yeah.
Okay. What was the name of that company?
Popalock.
Popalock.
Yep. I worked for them for a number of years. It's kind of where I guess, gave them my wings or whatever.
Okay.
Got earned my stripes, the 24 hours,
Yeah.
running around, and that's a young man's gig and all that. But I love this line of work, and I loved it then, and I've been in it now for 23 years.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. Yeah, I know that you're pretty popular around this area, and you're part of some pretty big networks. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're part of the chambers, out here, and then a couple of networking groups and stuff like that. And really, obviously, is to give back to the community as much as we can. Really, at this time, we're planning to get more and more as we grow.
I'll say it's been, really good talking to you, Tony. I'm glad that you took the time to invite me to your shop here and actually do this podcast. I do have to bring up one thing from the previous podcast when we had 4 questions. Basically, we gave the information that we were going to do a shout out for the first 5 people to get the answer correctly, and also that we were going to give out a book to the 3rd person to answer all 5 questions correctly in the 3rd position. We did have several people that answered a lot of the questions, but they didn't answer all the questions correctly. We only had one person that answered all of our questions all correctly, that at least contacted and let us know. That person is basically the person that will be getting the book that I promised, Directories of Missouri Natural Areas. I want to give a shout out to that person. That will be Aaron Poe. So, Aaron, if you can contact me and give me your contact information to be able to ship this book out to you. And I hope you enjoy it. I appreciate you getting back to us with the extensive answers that you came back with. I think the one that got most of the people was the flower that still grows along the rivulet along Minnesauk Falls, which is the trail that we were talking about. Giving the answers out to those questions now, the highest point in Missouri is 1,772 feet. That's on top of Tom Sauk Mountain. That's a state park. The highest waterfall is Minnesauk Falls, which is 132 feet. And the easiest name for that flower, which still grows along that area right now, is the Indian pink. But again, I want to give that shout out to Aaron Poe for answering all the questions correctly.
Good job, Aaron.
Yeah. I mean, and basically, I was pretty impressed of the details that I got back from them. So he did a lot of research. Is Mel? She was also on there as well, so she had some information. But yeah, definitely wanted to give that shout out to them and also make sure that we get this book to you. So again, please get us your contact information and we will make sure we get this out and delivered to you. I appreciate it. Thank you for everybody that's listened. And again, I want to thank Tony for having us to his shop. Thank you, Tony.
Well, thank you, sir. It was a good time to hang out with you for a while and talk about some of this stuff. Welcome anytime.
Well, I appreciate it. And we here at Rediscovering Earth's Lost Topography, we like to travel. And if anybody is interested in meeting up with us, you know, to a certain degree, but I would be willing to meet up and do a podcast with other people, talk about their adventures or whatever they're interested in. So thank you guys. Thanks for listening, and y'all have a wonderful day. Y'all take care.